you know, everybody
Well, we'll just have to
job
see what's the best. What have some kind of project,
projected date.
and then just work over. Everybody's just managed to get off or whatever. It'll probably be a weekend, like you said, a holiday or.
Yeah. Um, he said his schedule was so he never knew what his band schedule was going to be
Mm-hmm.
when they were going to be working. So I just I don't know, but I just don't right now. I don't know, but I guess it'll work out whenever it's supposed to. Um, so anyway, that's where I'm at on that. But but you said yesterday that Tim said he was sad because he realized him and Mike were the same age, and
Well, like that, he that it he was had been the same. That through the years, like growing up, that he would
mm,
have been the same age, and that would have been, something that would have been difficult for you. He said, "Well, I wonder how that made." I can't remember exactly how he
yeah,
said it, how Charlotte felt about. But I was always the same, that I
yeah.
would have been the same age and everything. And I told him, and I said that was just we just never did talk about it. It was just like you just acted like it wasn't there and ignored the fact or something. And after Mark came along, I always just hoped and prayed that had filled a vacancy or something. But I said we never did talk about it.
Mm-mm. And I guess I would just because I figured like nobody nobody cared. Nobody ever asked me how I felt.
But I just said that was, to me, that was a sign of real. I know everybody says dysfunctional, but I said we put a whole new meaning to the word dysfunctional in our family because.
And I just felt like Mother never cared about me, or she wouldn't have tortured me like she did about that.
She had a funny way. I think Mother, in her own way, loved people, but I guess she did, Charlotte. I don't know. She was, Mother was able to justify whatever she did. Somehow she justified what she did. I think about how she did about money and stuff, about how her and Bubba conspired to cheat me out of my part of that money in
Yeah.
Texas, and somehow or another she could justify all that.
But even after the overdose, and I mean, you told me last year only that what happened at the hospital with you and Mother and her calling New Orleans. I mean, I never knew all that. Nobody said anything to me. I was just treated like it never happened. So I never said anything, and I just had to live with it. But I never the the cruelest thing was when the minute I got back from New Orleans, she brought me straight to your house to see your baby.
I know it. I mean, you look back on it, it just none of it made sense. It was like we're just going to act like this never happened, and so it means that it didn't. If we act that way, that it means it didn't happen.
And that was just
And so nobody
horrible.
would ever say, "Well, how do you feel about it?" No. But when in our family did anybody say, "Well, how do you feel? How does that make you feel?" Which are to validate anybody's feelings in any way. And we just weren't supportive that way. I guess there was other ways that Mother and Daddy might have been supportive. I don't know if they even understood what it was to be supportive about anything or to.
But I didn't realize until in '95 before I went to New Orleans. I didn't when I brought all this to the surface. I didn't realize that I had some really hard feelings towards you and Tane about it.
Because you felt like we didn't care?
That maybe you could have given me another option?
Charlotte, we probably could. You know, if you look back on it, which I did 1,000 times, I went over the whole thing in my mind thinking, how could we have done this any differently, because of my own heartache through the years, about how much it hurt me to know that there was a child there. And somehow or another, I was not able to overrule Mother, I guess. That I wouldn't have been able to.
It just seems so horrible that there was a sister that was married and had a home and was pregnant at the same time. That was just horrible. And you got to keep your baby, and I didn't.
Like I say, you can go back over it 100 times and think of what we could have done differently, and wish we'd done differently, and it still doesn't change anything. Because I have gone over that in my mind myself of thinking, what could we have done? And at the time, life was so difficult for us. Ting had that job and was having to live in New Orleans, and I was working and had 2 babies, and just couldn't hardly see daylight. You just can't hardly see daylight for yourself, and I guess I just didn't have the wherewithal to think through it, or to just say. Some people can do it. Some people can just say, well, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it, and believe that everything will turn out all right. And I just seemed like that was all I could do to make it from day to day. But not to say that I didn't look back a million times and think, why didn't we have the sense to know we could have done something different? And really, Bubba and Pat would have helped us too. We would have all stuck together and done it. We would have if we'd have just said something about it. We would have all rallied around. But somehow, it was just the decision was made, and then we just stuck to it.
Well, oh, I've just had some real bad feelings towards y'all, but I have to forgive.
Well, I think that's where the healing comes, is being able to forgive and to believe that nobody, everybody makes mistakes, and people are sorry for it and would do anything if they could undo it. But you can't. That's the hard part, is you can't undo it. But, all you can do is say that I can only say I'm sorry. I can't undo the past. But I would never recommend it to anybody myself, because it is a terrible heartache. I know how much I suffered through the years because of it.
Well,
And I believe Mother did too. I just don't see how she could have not have.
and I don't, if I can ever get over the pain, but I just, so far, haven't been able to do it.
Well, I think if you could stop the thinking, that's the only way I've ever been able to deal with my pain, is every time the thought come up and the memory come up, I replaced it with something else. I replaced it with a better memory and a better thought, because as long as you give in to thinking about it and going over it and rehearsing it, then it's just going to stay bigger than life. And it finally gets smaller and smaller when you don't give a place to it. And you have a lot of good memories to replace those bad memories with now. You can think something good. Think about something that happened recently that's better than thinking about that. And if you don't feed it and give in to those thoughts, then they have to go away. They just have to. They can't. There's nothing for them to live on. And that's the way I've learned to get healed from bad memories and old things that ought to be let die.
And I felt like I was just taken down there and dropped off at the door and forgotten about by my family and brought back home and tortured about it.
And at the time, it was probably done in a very thoughtless way, but never intending. At the time it was done, we probably thought we was doing doing the best we could, and not trying to slough you off or anything like that, but really doing all we knew to do. Could have done better, but at the time we didn't do it. I mean, it did happen. It shouldn't have, but it did, and we have to deal with what did happen and just know that we can't change it, and work on forgiving.
Mother wrote me a letter telling me all about when your baby was born. It's like I wasn't there where I was and why I was there. It just seemed like every chance she got to torture me about it, she did it.
Well, it was thoughtless to say the least, and who can explain that? I mean, who in the world would know how to know what went through her mind?
And I wrote back and told her I did not want to see your baby when I came home in that strait where she took me. I guess all that makes the pain worse because of the way I was treated.
But Charlotte, I really don't think anybody was just saying, well, that we're going to torture Charlotte, we're going to torment her because of this. I don't think that was in anybody's mind. I think that it was. I don't know why Mother did it, but I do not think that she was thinking, I'm going to punish her or torment her or torture her this way. And I know I didn't. I know I didn't. I just can't remember a whole lot about it. I know that you stayed there with me at Bats for a while, but it seems like to me that we were happy there, and that thought we were doing the right thing. Is the way I trying to figure out what to do next. But never was it the thought to abuse you.
And then when Daddy died, and I had carried that pain so long about my baby, I couldn't take it anymore, and I did another overdose. I couldn't take the pain of losing him, who never hurt me. I felt hurt because of the way he was treated by Mother, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I almost succeeded with that one, because I was out. I was unconscious for 2 days, even in the hospital. And I did get my hospital notes and last year, and it told how I talked about the abuse I suffered because of the baby I was forced to give up.
You mean you got the medical record?
Yes. I put myself in the hospital at Shumpert. I couldn't take anymore. I felt like I was insane.
And I don't know if the suicide came after that or not. But that's the records I got of when I put myself in the hospital. And it was in there about how I talked about the baby. And that I felt I was suffered a lot of abuse about it.
Well, like I say, I know it was never in my intention to mistreat you or torment you in any way, and I just can't believe that Mother intentionally did. I mean, she may have been ignorant about a lot of things, but and just did things you know, that was something that was just kind of bizarre, I would say, but who knows why she did it. Just like I say, she just made up her mind it didn't happen, and if that's the way she did, it was just like, you know.
And nobody ever said anything to me through all of my problems. Nobody ever said, "How are you feeling? Why do you feel this way?"
No, that's the thing that to me is, I mean, I know myself, I just never could. I never could. That's one of my unhealthy mental blockages, is that I can't talk about things, and it's very difficult for me to. It's been difficult for me to talk about it after all these years, but I've pushed through it. I've just pressed through and made myself do it and believe it's better for all of us if we're able to do it, but it's very painful. But you know, like I say, the thing that we deal with is the reality of it, is that it did happen, and it's time to put it behind us, and for you to put it behind you and go on with your life and not let it destroy all of your life. You still have a lot of good years left, and you've found your son, and this is the time to put that thing to rest. And if you can make yourself believe that nobody really meant to torment you and everybody really would have done it differently if they could do it over again, that we would all have done it differently, and accept that and just put it away, put it to death, bury it, because nothing good can come. Nothing good can come of excessive keeping on grieving about it. It's horrible for you and for your children and everybody, but most of all for you. It's just not it. Now that is not healthy. But you're the one that has to believe it. I mean, nobody can. No, I don't know the magic word to say to tell you that everybody involved would have done it differently if they had a chance to go back and do it again. And there's not anybody, I don't believe, that lives on the face of this earth that don't have some things in their life that they regret and that they would gladly change if they could go back. And me and Ting certainly both feel that way about that particular thing in our life, that we wish we'd have had the foresight or the faith or whatever it would have taken to have done something different.
Well, I just needed to tell you how I felt about it because we never talk about things, and I thought maybe it would help me to finally get over it if I had just told you how I felt about it.
Well, I can only say I'm sorry for my part in it, and I never would have meant for anything to torture you. But I'm telling you, Charlotte, when families are dysfunctional, they do things that don't make sense, and they don't. Some of them worse off than what we are, I guess. So I've read about some things, but nobody, who would ever believe if a bunch of us went in to see a shrink, who would ever believe that we would have gone through our whole lifetime and never talked about it, just acted like it never happened and just did superficial stuff? Well, I still am like that. I'm like that with Ting and with my children. I just talk about the weather or nice, fluffy things, and we don't ever talk about
Well, I've made a point that Mark and I talk about things because I know how horrible it was to live through all that and never felt like I had any support, any family support. Even through all my emotional problems, people just looked at me and never said anything. And they just watched me go through it, but they never said anything supportive to help me through it. So Mark and I talk about things. And I always let him know I love him. That was something I never heard as a child. And we say that every day to each other.
Well, I think that's healthy. At least I know it's normal. I think it's normal to me. My problem is not normal, but, that's just something that I have to work on.
And that's why I was so angry when I heard about Barbara, because it instantly brought back the feelings that nobody cared about me in the family, that everybody's going behind my back and talking about me like I felt like they've always done.
I think she's the only person in the family that does anything like that. I just can't believe there's any other person in the world that's like her.
Because nobody's given me any support now about it. I'm just having to dig for things from people. So I've just made a point not to have it that way with my child that I got to raise. So that's just what I wanted to tell you. So I could, for the record, we've talked about it.
Well, I just hope that you'll be able to. I know it's something that'll always be, you can't just rewrite history, which we would love to do, but to at least work on putting it to rest and letting it just be put it where the past belongs. I mean, the past belongs in the past, and not to mess up your todays and your tomorrows and make you sad all the time. But if it helped you to talk about it, then I'm glad you did. And I feel like we have a wonderful future myself. We've all got a lot to be thankful for.
Well, it was such a horrible thing, and it's still so painful. I just feel like I need to talk about it. And that's what I'm doing. Because I was never allowed to do it for 30 years. I never got to grieve openly about it. I guess that's what I'm doing now. I was forced to keep it inside and bury it. And that pain is still coming out now that it's out in the open.
That'll be something that'll heal. That will be the healing factor in it, because I know there has to be healing.
I just don't know how long it takes. I wish it would go away, but it hasn't. It's not like losing a pet. It was losing a child.
No, nobody would have ever even thought to compare it with that. It was a heart-rending thing.
So, that's just something I needed to do. So, uh, that's all I know to say about it.
Well, I'm glad you called, Charlotte. We'll talk again.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.